The world has taught you the wrong definition of strength. It told you that strength is loud, that power must announce itself, that confidence needs to be displayed, defended, and proven. So men learned to talk fast, react even faster, and fill every moment with noise, with opinions, with explanations, with excuses, with endless arguments. And the more noise they make, the weaker they quietly become. Because true strength does not shout, it does not rush, and it does not feel the need to explain itself. True strength is silent. Silence does not mean absence, it means control. It means a man who is no longer pulled by every thought, every impulse, every provocation. A man who has learned something rare in a world addicted to reaction, restraint, presence, and direction. Look around. Most men are exhausted, not because life is too heavy, but because their minds never stop talking. Every situation turns into a debate. Every feeling becomes a command. Every thought demands immediate action. They are dragged from one reaction to the next, mistaking constant movement for real progress. And slowly, without even noticing, they lose access to their own power. The Stoics saw this danger centuries ago. They understood that the greatest threat to a man is not the world outside, but the chaos within. An undisciplined mind turns every inconvenience into suffering, every opinion into an insult, every delay into frustration. And when the mind runs wild, the man follows. That is why Stoicism does not begin with motivation. It begins with silence. Silence in reaction, silence of the ego, silence before action. This is not weakness. This is mastery. Most people believe that thinking more makes them smarter, but much of what we call thinking is nothing more than noise, repetition, rumination, fear disguised as analysis. The mind loops the same scenarios again and again, not to solve them, but to avoid acting, to avoid risk, to avoid responsibility. The Stoics understood this clearly. They did not try to eliminate thoughts. They trained themselves not to obey them blindly. They learned to pause, to observe, to create space between what appears in the mind and what is done with the body. That space is where strength is born. A weak man reacts immediately. A strong man waits. Waiting does not mean hesitating. It means choosing. It means refusing to let the first impulse take control. It means remembering that not every thought deserves belief, not every emotion deserves expression, and not every situation deserves a response. Silence becomes the filter. When you remove the need to respond to everything, something powerful happens. Your energy stops leaking. Your attention sharpens. Your actions become deliberate instead of emotional. You stop performing for the world and start building yourself in private. This is why silence feels uncomfortable at first, because it strips away the distractions that hide insecurity. When you stop talking, you hear your thoughts more clearly. When you stop reacting, you see your habits more honestly. And when you stop filling every moment with noise, you come face to face with yourself. Most men avoid this. They keep themselves busy, loud, and distracted, not because they are strong, but because they are afraid of what they might find in the quiet. The Stoic does the opposite. He enters the silence willingly, not to escape the world, but to regain command over himself. True strength is not found in dominating others. It is found in governing your own inner state. A man who cannot control his reactions is easy to manipulate. His buttons are exposed. His emotions are predictable. His behavior can be triggered by a word, a look, or a delay. A man who has learned silence is different. He does not flinch at provocation. He does not rush to defend his ego, and he does not waste energy explaining himself to people who do not matter. He chooses his words carefully, and very often he chooses not to speak at all. This is not indifference, it is discipline. Silence allows you to see clearly. When you are not busy reacting, you begin to notice patterns. You notice intentions. You notice what actually deserves your effort and what is nothing more than noise. And once you see clearly, action becomes simple. The Stoics believed that clarity is a form of power. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not to impress anyone, but to keep his mind aligned. An emperor who commanded armies still understood that his greatest battle was internal. He knew that if he lost control of his reactions, no amount of external power could compensate. This is why Stoic strength looks calm, grounded, almost unremarkable to the untrained eye. But beneath that calm is structure, order, a mind that does not collapse under pressure because it was trained in quiet moments long before the storm arrived. True strength is built when no one is watching, in how you handle frustration alone, in how you respond to disappointment when there is no audience, in whether you speak to inflate your ego or remain silent to protect your focus. Silence is not passive. It is selective. You do not stop thinking. You think with purpose. You do not stop speaking. You speak with intention. And you do not withdraw from the world. You engage without losing yourself. This is the foundation. Before discipline, before focus, before mastery of action, silence comes first. Because a man who cannot be silent cannot be strong. He will always be reacting, explaining, defending, and chasing approval. But a man who can sit in silence without discomfort has already won half the battle. He has reclaimed his attention, and attention is the raw material of power. In the next part, we will go deeper into this foundation. How controlling your inner noise changes the way you think, decide, and act. How silence becomes the gateway to discipline, not the absence of it. And how mastering what happens inside you makes the outside world far less intimidating. True strength is silent, and this is where it begins. Silence is not just something you practice in moments of calm. It is something you enforce when pressure rises. Most men misunderstand discipline. They think it's about pushing harder, grinding longer, forcing motivation when they feel empty. But discipline, in its purest form, is quieter than that. It is the ability to act without argument, to move without internal debate, to follow through without needing emotional permission. And silence is what makes that possible. Every time you feel resistance, notice what happens inside you. The mind starts talking. It negotiates, it explains, it complains, it searches for loopholes. Just today, just this once. You deserve a break. Tomorrow, you'll be stronger. These thoughts don't sound dangerous, they sound reasonable. That's why they work. But this inner dialogue is not intelligence, it is avoidance dressed as logic. The Stoics knew that the moment you begin negotiating with weakness, you have already lost control. Discipline cannot survive endless discussion. It needs clarity, and clarity comes from silence. A disciplined man does not wait until the moment of action to decide. He decides in advance. He sets rules when his mind is calm, then follows them when emotions are loud. That way, when the time comes, there is no debate. The body moves. The task begins. Silence replaces hesitation. This is why Stoic discipline looks effortless from the outside. Not because it is easy, but because the struggle already happened earlier, in quiet moments, when decisions were made without pressure. Weak men fight themselves every day. Strong men remove the fight. They remove it by eliminating unnecessary choices, by building routines, by creating structures that do not depend on mood. When action becomes automatic, inner noise loses its influence. Thoughts can complain, but they no longer control behavior. Silence becomes operational. Think about the moments when you fail yourself. They rarely happen when you don't know what to do. They happen when you talk yourself out of doing it, when you let internal chatter delay action, when you give fear and comfort equal voting rights. Silence cuts that off, not by suppressing thoughts, but by refusing to engage with them. You acknowledge their presence, then move anyway. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel confident. You only need to act according to principle. This is where discipline stops being emotional and starts being structural. The Stoics trained this through voluntary discomfort, not because suffering is virtuous, but because comfort weakens command. When you always seek ease, your mind learns to panic at resistance. But when you practice discomfort deliberately, silence grows stronger. Cold teaches you that sensation is not danger. Hunger teaches you that impulse does not rule you. Fatigue teaches you that action is still possible without motivation. Each of these experiences quiets the mind's exaggerated warnings. The nervous system recalibrates. Fear loses its authority, and silence expands. A man who can remain silent under discomfort becomes very difficult to control. He does not rush toward relief. He does not collapse under pressure. He understands that discomfort is temporary, but the consequences of weak decisions are lasting. This is why Stoic discipline does not rely on inspiration. Inspiration fades. Silence remains. Silence before reacting to insult. Silence before responding to temptation. Silence before quitting. That pause is where discipline lives. Most people think discipline means saying yes to effort, but often it means saying no. No to impulse, no to distraction, no to the urge to explain yourself, no to unnecessary emotional expenditure. Every unnecessary word drains energy. Every unnecessary reaction scatters focus. Every unnecessary thought clouds judgment. Silence preserves strength. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim authority. When you stop reacting to everything, you reclaim time. When you stop feeding inner noise, you reclaim direction. This is why Stoics valued restraint so deeply. A man who can restrain his tongue can restrain his habits. A man who can restrain his habits can restrain his destiny. Discipline is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shows up quietly, consistently, without applause. It builds results that do not need explanation. Look closely at men who command respect. They are not frantic. They are not reactive. They do not fill silence with words. They let silence do the work. Their presence is grounded because their mind is not constantly defending itself. They do not prove. They demonstrate. Silence trains you to trust yourself. When you stop narrating your life internally and externally, you start living it. Action replaces commentary. Execution replaces intention. Over time, something subtle happens. The mind becomes quieter, not because you forced it, but because it learned resistance is useless. Weak thoughts still appear, but they feel distant, less convincing, less personal. This is discipline maturing. It no longer feels like effort. It feels like alignment. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are moving as one. Thought, body, and decision in sync. That is what Stoics meant by inner harmony, and it is only possible when silence leads. Discipline without silence becomes aggression. Silence without discipline becomes passivity. Together they create command. In the next part, we will move even deeper. How silence reshapes your identity. How repeated self-command changes the way you carry yourself, the way others perceive you, and the way pressure affects you. Not through force, through consistency, through quiet authority. True strength is silent, and discipline is how you make it permanent. Silence does more than shape your discipline. Over time, it reshapes who you become. Most men try to change their lives by changing what they do. They chase new habits, new routines, new strategies, but they ignore something deeper. Identity is not built by words. It is built by repeated decisions made without witnesses. And silence is the environment where those decisions take root. When you stop announcing your intentions, you begin to test them. When you stop explaining yourself, you begin to trust yourself. When you stop reacting, you begin to feel your own weight. This is how a silent identity forms. A loud identity needs validation. It needs feedback. It needs constant confirmation that it exists. A silent identity does not. It grows through consistency, through follow-through, through private proof. And proof is the only thing that creates unshakable confidence. The Stoics understood this. They did not craft identities through self-description. They built them through conduct. Marcus Aurelius never called himself strong. He behaved as if strength was required. Epictetus never claimed wisdom. He practiced restraint where others collapsed. Identity followed action, not the other way around. This is where most people get trapped. They try to feel like a disciplined person before acting like one. They wait for confidence to arrive before taking responsibility. They wait for clarity before committing, and in that waiting, nothing changes. Silence breaks this cycle. When you act without commentary, your mind begins to align with your behavior. Doubt loses its platform. Fear loses its audience. The inner voice that once questioned everything grows quieter because it is no longer being consulted. You stop asking, "Who am I?" You start proving it. This is why silent men carry a different presence. It is not posture, it is not volume, it is not dominance, it is coherence. There is no gap between what they decide and what they do. And that alignment is felt. People sense it before they understand it. A man who does not rush to speak controls the tempo. A man who does not react controls the frame. A man who does not explain himself controls the interaction. This is quiet authority. Authority does not come from intimidation. It comes from stability, from predictability under pressure, from knowing that you will not collapse emotionally when challenged. Silence trains this stability daily. Every time you choose not to react, you reinforce control. Every time you choose action over explanation, you reinforce trust. Every time you choose restraint over release, you reinforce identity. Pressure reveals this more clearly than comfort ever could. When pressure hits, most men fragment. They speak more. They justify more. They rush decisions. They look outward for reassurance. Silence disappears, and with it, control. The Stoic trains for this moment in advance. By practicing silence when nothing is at stake, you prepare for silence when everything is. You condition your nervous system to remain steady. You teach your mind that urgency is not authority, that intensity does not equal importance. This is why Stoics emphasize daily reflection, not as a performance, but as calibration, to check alignment, to remove excess, to restore silence. A man who reflects regularly does not need to overreact publicly. He has already addressed himself privately. Silent identity also changes how you relate to others. You stop needing to win arguments. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. You stop wasting energy on people who do not share your values, not out of arrogance, but clarity. You realize that attention is finite, and silence is how you protect it. You give it only where it compounds, where it builds, where it strengthens. This does not make you distant, it makes you selective. And selectivity is strength. Over time, something important happens. You begin to respect yourself more, not because others praise you, but because you keep your own word. Self-respect grows when your actions match your standards. Silence helps enforce that match. You no longer promise what you cannot deliver. You no longer speak from emotion. You no longer betray your principles for comfort. This inner consistency creates calm, not passive calm, but grounded calm, the kind that remains under stress, the kind that makes others slow down in your presence. That calm is earned. The Stoics did not seek admiration, they sought integrity, and integrity produces a quiet gravity that cannot be faked. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be borrowed. It must be built. Silence also removes a dangerous illusion, the illusion that expression equals relief. Many men believe that venting makes them lighter, that reacting releases tension, that saying everything on their mind is honesty. Often, it is the opposite. Excess expression feeds emotion. Reaction amplifies disturbance. Explanation prolongs conflict. Silence allows emotions to pass without expanding. It keeps problems from becoming identities. It prevents temporary states from turning into permanent stories. This is emotional maturity, not suppressing emotion, but containing it, allowing it to exist without letting it dictate behavior. This containment is what gives you range. You can feel deeply without acting recklessly. You can experience pressure without losing form. That is quiet authority over self. As this identity solidifies, the world responds differently. Not because you demand respect, but because you no longer seek approval. You listen more, you speak less, and when you do speak, it lands. Words gain weight when they are rare. Decisions gain power when they are calm. Presence deepens when it is not diluted by noise. This is not charisma, it is credibility, and credibility is built silently, over time, by men who choose alignment over attention. In the next and final part, we will bring everything together. How silence, discipline, and identity converge into a way of living that is resilient, focused, and difficult to shake. How true strength stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like command. True strength is silent, and by now, it is no longer just an idea. It is becoming who you are. At some point, silence stops feeling like a technique. It becomes a way of living. You no longer think in terms of, should I react, or should I explain? Those questions fade because the answer is already built into who you are. You act from alignment, not impulse, from principle, not pressure. And that is when true strength stops feeling fragile. This is what the Stoics were preparing for all along. Not a life free of difficulty, but a life that does not fracture under it. Not a world that bends to your will, but a will that remains steady, regardless of the world. When silence, discipline, and identity come together, something changes in how you move through life. You stop leaking energy into unnecessary places. You stop fighting battles that don't matter. You stop handing your attention to every distraction that demands it. You begin to command yourself, and self-command is the highest form of power. Most men never experience this because they stay trapped in reaction. They let circumstances dictate their mood. They let people dictate their behavior. They let thoughts dictate their actions. Their inner state is always one step behind whatever happens next. The Stoic reverses this. He understands that control is not about forcing outcomes. It is about choosing responses. It is about deciding in advance what deserves engagement and what does not. Silence is how he enforces that boundary. When something goes wrong, he does not rush to complain. When something provokes him, he does not rush to respond. When something tempts him, he does not rush to indulge. He pauses, he assesses, he chooses. This choice is not emotional, it is structural. It is rooted in the standards he has already set for himself, standards that do not change based on convenience. That is why Stoic strength looks calm even in chaos. Calm does not mean passive. Calm means anchored. A man who is anchored does not drift with every wave. He absorbs impact without losing direction. Pressure does not erase him, it reveals him. This is where most philosophies fail. They speak about ideals, but collapse under reality. Stoicism survives reality because it was built for it. It does not promise comfort. It promises clarity, and clarity is far more useful when things get difficult. True strength is not dramatic. It does not need to be seen. It does not need to be validated. It shows itself in consistency, in showing up when no one is watching, in doing what is necessary without applause, in staying steady when others fall apart. This is the power of living quietly but decisively. Over time, you begin to notice that fewer things disturb you, not because you became numb, but because you became selective. You learned that outrage is optional, that anxiety is often manufactured, that urgency is rarely truth. You stop mistaking noise for importance, and with that, your focus sharpens. Focus is not about intensity. It is about exclusion. is about deciding what does not belong in your mind, your time, or your energy. Silence is what creates that exclusion. It clears the space where focus can operate. A focused man is dangerous in the best sense of the word. Not reckless, not aggressive. Dangerous because he's not scattered. His actions compound. His effort is concentrated. His progress is quiet but undeniable. This is why the Stoics warned against excess speech, excess thought, excess emotion. Not because these things are evil, but because they dilute force. A blade loses effectiveness when it is spread thin. Silence sharpens the blade, and once sharpened, it does not need to swing wildly. One clean motion is enough. This is what your life becomes when you stop obeying every thought and start living by principle. You no longer chase motivation. You no longer argue with yourself endlessly. You move when it is time to move. You rest when it is time to rest. You speak when it is necessary, and you remain silent when it is not. No drama, no internal chaos, no wasted motion, just command. Command over your attention, command over your reactions, command over your direction. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes yours. There will still be setbacks, still loss, still uncertainty. Stoicism never denied that. What changes is your relationship to those things. They stop owning you. They stop defining you. They become situations to navigate, not identities to carry. A man who lives this way does not need to announce his philosophy. It shows in how he handles pressure, in how he listens more than he speaks, in how he does not chase validation, in how he remains steady when others are frantic. People may not always understand him. That is fine. Understanding is not the goal. Integrity is. The Stoics were never interested in popularity. They were interested in freedom. Freedom from emotional slavery. Freedom from impulse. Freedom from the need to react. Silence is the doorway to that freedom. Not silence as withdrawal, but silence as command. You do not disappear from the world. You stop being consumed by it. And once you experience that, you do not want to go back, because you realize something important. The world is loud because it is insecure. It demands attention because it lacks direction. When you become silent, you step out of that current. You move differently. You live deliberately. True strength does not argue. It does not explain. It does not perform. It decides. It acts. It endures. This is not a transformation that happens overnight. It is built choice by choice, pause by pause, decision by decision. Every time you choose silence over reaction, discipline over impulse, alignment over approval, you reinforce this way of being. And one day you notice it without needing to name it. You are calmer, you are clearer, you are harder to shake, not because the world changed, but because you did. True strength is silent, and now it is no longer just a concept you understand. It is a standard you live by.